Most of us know exactly what we want and what we want to do. We've just gotten really good at talking ourselves out of it. I'm Julie, and welcome to Be Cringe, the podcast that explores what happens when you start living for yourself and stop worrying about the opinions of others. This might be cringe, but we are doing it anyway. Happy to have you here. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Be Cringe. I am so excited to introduce you all to today's guest, Devon Hunt. Devon is a writer of Closet Brain Rot, a newsletter on Substack that I have been really loving. She is a retreat host. She has a path to her career that I think a lot of us can resonate with. She is a very avid reader and just has great taste. So Devon, welcome. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, Julie. I'm so excited to be here. I'm buzzing, I'm bubbling, I'm fizzing, all of the fun, cute, bevy words that you could imagine. I'm just jazzed.
I am also buzzing and bubbling, so I think we will have great energy today. One thing I forgot to mention, and it will become apparent to everyone, but Devon has an incredible vocabulary, and you have such a way of stringing a sentence together in such a way of words. It's apparent in your writing. It was apparent when we spoke, so I'm really excited for no pressure, but the one-liners that come out of this.
Oh gosh, I know. Now I'm on camera, on mic. It's on. No pressure though.
We're
No
ready.
pressure.
No pressure at all. Devon, I know I gave you an intro. I introed you. I shared what I know, but I would love for you to introduce yourself to anyone listening to the podcast. And it can be whatever way of introducing yourself feels right today.
Sure. Yeah. So I like to say I'm happiest when I wear many hats, especially being a clothes and accessories girl myself. Many hats, many interests. And so my day job is with a big four firm. I work on sales enablement and content strategy for our global growth team, which is sort of corporate word salad, but it's a marketing and comms role. And then outside of that, like you mentioned, I am a retreat host for a luxury reading retreat company called Ladies Who Lit. And then I'm also the writer behind Closet Brain Rot, which is a Substack I started actually in earnest probably about a year ago now, that focuses on where I explore that intersection of style, taste, identity, how that shows up in, not just the way we dress, but just the spaces we create, the objects we collect, things like that. I love stuff and I love talking about stuff.
I love that. I love stuff too. And I don't know, in this day and age, it feels like there's this pressure to reject loving stuff. There's this desire to be minimalist while also this desire to overconsume. And there's sort of this push and pull. And how do we love stuff and also build taste at the same time? And I think that's such a interesting intersection.
Yeah, I have I would want to say probably maybe in my early 20s I dabbled with the idea of what minimalism could look like. And for me, that didn't translate, I guess, into owning maybe less stuff, quote unquote. I know there's people that do the I throw 100 things away every year challenge. Could never be me. I definitely bring
No.
in probably more than I'm getting rid of. But the things that I bring in, I try to be really intentional about in terms of, the quality, the purpose. I am a practicality meets aesthetics person. So if it's not serving a function or serving a purpose, and it's just taking up space, that's a lot of physical and mental clutter that we don't need to hold on to. And I do really subscribe to the idea that you should be, if it doesn't serve you, it will serve someone else. And so you should give that thing, whether it's, your clothes, um, books. I don't get rid of books. That's not a me thing, but some people do. Dishes, cocktail glasses, etc. The different things that we gather and collect. If it no longer resonates, it will be someone else's favorite thing that they've ever purchased or ever owned. And so sort of giving that back to the world, to find its next best owner, I think is an act of love and sort of an underrated part of the consumer cycle, because we get so caught up in what I have and not what, I'm giving back out into the world to have a second chance at being, somebody else's favorite thing that they can't wait to tell their mom that they picked up, or their best friend or their sister, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I very much resonate with that. I'm a big fan of my local Buy Nothing group on Facebook. And it's the only reason why I still have a Facebook, is so I can give things and also receive things. Because, yeah, you never know what somebody is getting rid of or what you are getting rid of that will serve other folks. This intentionality of like, bringing all of that into our life. Not where I thought we'd start, but I just latched onto
Yeah.
that because I don't know, it just struck me. I'm sure we'll get more into the fashion stuff later, but I would love to start talking about just like your journey to where you are today. I know you mentioned you work for a big four.
Hmm.
You also have this like luxury retreat company you work for as well, which I just imagine like women reading, eating grapes by a pool or like being fed grapes. Like that's my envisionment
You nailed it.
of
Yes.
a luxury reading retreat. It sounds absolutely incredible. And you know, when you and I talked, I know you sort of kind of balanced this approach of saying like this career fell into my lap, but also that's not fair because I worked very hard. Um,
I think like a lot of people, right, especially and this is very like entrenched in like US culture, obviously, but there's sort of that expectation. And whether it's intentional or otherwise, like I know that some people have families that don't put this sort of pressure, but regardless, there's sort of this societal expectation that like somehow by the time you magically become a junior or a senior in high school, you know what you want to do and you know how you're going to get there. And I think for a lot of us, that's just like not necessarily the case or not accurate, or like you maybe have an inkling, but it's not a fully fleshed out, like fledged plan ABC of how you're going to get there because you just don't have that world experience to be able to say, like, this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to get there. For, I'm going to say the majority of us, like, there's probably someone out there that's like, wrong. I was 10 and I knew what I wanted, but you're the exception. So for me, like I grew up in a self-employed family. Like parents owned their own company until I was about like 13, and then they went into different levels of corporate careers. So my mom worked in retail. My dad was always a finance guy, accounting guy for mostly software and tech companies. And so I kind of grew up around that business brain, and I knew that that resonated with me. And so that was sort of the way I went about things was almost like process of elimination. Like, I don't think I'm going to be a STEM girl. Science, math, engineering, not my wheelhouse, not the way my brain is hardwired to work. Instinctively set that aside. Like, medicine, I get too nauseous. No way. We're not doing that. I'm not built for it. So, like, business though was broad enough that I was like, I could do probably anything with a business degree. Like, let's do that. And so, did well in high school, ended up going to Cal Poly SLO in California, which has a really good business program. And my freshman year, you take all of these different classes that sort of line you up with all of the different concentrations that you can pick. And I had a friend on my floor in the dorms that was very like she rolled up day one and was like, I will be accounting. And she knew it. She was like, this is what I'm going for. This is my plan. I'm in it. She also was like one of the most shy, like sort of socially awkward people when thrown into big, like professional settings, like one on one with like a peer, totally fine. But like she would kind of clam up a little bit. And I'm the yes friend. Like if you want to go somewhere, but you don't want to go alone, whatever it is, right? You're going to like a career thing, fine, I'll go. Ditch me when you want. You want to go to like a like meetup event, I'll go. Ditch me, whatever. I'm game and in for almost anything. So I volunteered to go with her to like a Meet the Firms event where there was a bunch of different accounting firms and public service or professional service firms from all over the place. And I just started talking to people. Like, she obviously started talking to people. I started talking to different people. She had those conversations. And I kind of started to listen to what the day to day was like in those roles. And I was like, oh, okay, like I could do that. And then the classwork was also sort of clicking with me. So by default, I kind of ended up on this accounting path. It wasn't necessarily something that I think I would have like actively chosen if I was given like a list or a spread of cards and said like pick your top two. Like my hand wouldn't have leapt towards
Mhm.
accounting. You know what I mean? Just,
I can relate to
based
that. Yeah.
on yeah, everything that you think about when you think of like the world of like accounting, you're like, I'm like, I am like young and fun. Like I'm not going into accounting. So anyways, I ended up in accounting. I have a CPA now. And I sort of like what happens that I think a lot of people don't necessarily always talk about with like Big Four specifically is once you kind of step on that conveyor belt and once you prove that you have a good balance of technical capability, like you can kind of understand the technical side of it and you're a people person that has soft skills and you can sort of bridge those two together, like they keep your email and you sort of unless you actively like make an effort to like stop engaging or tell them you're no longer interested, like they'll continue to reach out to you. And
Hmm.
so it sort of became this thing where like it was the least friction based path to success, it felt like, because I already had like sort of the credibility check mark internally with myself that I could do the coursework, so I could do the technical. I knew that I already had the people skills and the soft skills. And so I just kind of stayed in contact, and that sort of kicks off the process. And unless you do something like crazy, like a crime, they kind like you're still in the loop, like unless you end up with
Yeah.
like a record or
A
something
real
like,
record, not like a
yeah, or
college
you like
record.
yeah, or you like fail out of school or like something
Yeah.
something major happens, like you're kind of in there. And so you get that momentum and that momentum carries you forward for better or worse, right? And so that's sort of how I started is it, it led from, those meet the firms events to an internship to a full-time offer to starting work. And I've been at the same company since 2018, but I've kind of switched around roles internally. Yeah. So I'll pause there. That's sort of my like path to how I ended up in the role, I guess, or I guess at the company that I'm at now. And then sort of how I ended up in these other periphery roles like the retreat host role and the writing, et cetera, is sort of, not necessarily it was a choice to get off the treadmill, if you will. Those were like
Mm. Mhm.
active tangential side quests, I would say, rather than, following the other salmon upstream.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can only imagine being 20, 19, 20, 21, however old you are when you're like, doing all these
Mhm.
things in college and just having a guaranteed job being interested in you. Like, how could you not? How could you not do the internship and do the like I could not see myself making a different decision. I went to a small liberal arts school, so I don't think we were on any Big Four radars, right? Like that stuff just like didn't
There's
happen. I also
absolutely no
have a
way.
social science degree, so like they
Respectfully.
weren't coming to like my classes. Maybe the business kids, but I don't even know if that was happening, right?
Yeah.
But I could very much see myself like, yeah, like I'm in school and I can do this work and they want to give me a job and why wouldn't I? Like let's go, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. Just kind of bringing myself back to the my 20-ish year old brain. Um
Mhm.
yeah, obviously you did work hard and you did, you went to a great school and all of that, but like yeah, once you're in it, I can very much understand the momentum of that conveyor belt, and needing to feel like you get to a place where maybe you want to get off. So I'd love to then talk about like that moment or what led up to you doing these other for you fun things and sort of how you're
Yeah.
navigating that world.
Yeah. I think for me it's sort of the need to pivot crept up slowly and then sort of crash landed. So I spent about 6.5 years working in client service. I did public audits for anybody that's listening that's like very familiar with that. Anything that you think of when you think of like professional service firms and the hours and the workload that come along with that and the expectations, like close enough. That's basically it. So yeah, I spent about 6.5 years doing that. And it was it had the I guess the benefit of rolling up to it and realizing like, "Oh, I can totally do this." Like this is definitely a job that I can do and I can succeed in. And so, when it came to the reviews and stuff like that you get given obviously as an employee regularly throughout the year, like I was getting really good feedback. And so I was being sort of externally validated by my team members, by my leadership, et cetera, saying like you're doing a really good job. And that is, like that's momentum building, right? That's confidence building. It triggers something in us when we hear externally that we're doing a good job. Be like, great, keep going. And so because of that, I, really put my foot on the gas and I just like threw everything at it. Was like, I'm going to be the best at this that I can possibly be. So, I was early promoted twice, once to senior associate, once to manager. And I was about probably a year away from making senior manager and having that promotion. And I was sort of in the time prior to that, pretty much on the other side of making manager. I was starting to feel that like inevitable slowdown, like the feeling that you get when you're like on a treadmill and you've kicked the incline up and you're like, I'm keeping pace, but I think I might throw up. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
if I keep doing this, like I'm getting a side cramp. This isn't fun anymore. And so it was sort of that similar sort of feeling of having the incline on the treadmill slowly ratchet up. And at
Mm.
a certain point, you start, like for me at least, I started to recognize that I wasn't caring as much as I previously had been. And there was sort of this gradual disengagement, like lack of curiosity, almost autopilot nature to the way that I was approaching the work that I was doing. And it wasn't that I was like not performing or I was underperforming. I was still doing all of the things that the job required. I was still showing up for my team, my clients in the same way, but I was just like sort of disconnected. It was very much a like check the box exercise and that was about
Mhm.
it. And so like the piece that I started to like pay attention to that I like resonated with me was like that apathy as that sort of proverbial canary in the coal mine, right? Of that was my first warning sign that burnout was coming. And I wasn't listening to it because I think there's a lot of rhetoric, especially in corporate and in like corporate roles where like your job doesn't have to fulfill your purpose and like you don't have to have a higher purpose when it comes to your job. It could just be something that pays your bills. Like we've all seen those sorts of like posts on
Mhm.
LinkedIn and things like that and like heard that like sort of talking point from our friends that are in sort of these jobs where they end up stagnating after a while. And so that apathy piece as that like first signal of like misalignment, like something's not working, we're sort of encouraged to like push through it, and
Mhm. Yeah.
not take it as maybe seriously as we should. When we have that signal, what we should be doing is pausing, listening, and like investigating like what is that telling us? Because I think there's definitely some choices I think I would have made differently if I was listening to it in that
Mhm.
way, and not to say the choices that I've made since haven't been, like, fantastic and led me to a place that I'm, like, so much happier in and, like, so much more fulfilled in, but I definitely could have saved myself a little bit of, like, physical and mental stress for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard, right? When you're around people and they're like, yeah, this is part of it. Like at some point,
Mhm.
many of us feel this way and we can
Yeah.
push through. And so there is this
Yeah.
eh, this, idea or whatever circling around that it is just sort of part of long-term work. And I think like less in our generations, but there is this sort of like you get a job and you have it for 30 years and you retire and they give you a pension maybe and check, right? You did it.
Yes.
And yeah, apathy being that sign of burnout in hindsight, I feel like I felt that way and didn't really get it. It was
Mhm.
like, well, it's work. Like I'm giving them my energy, they're giving me a paycheck, and that's the deal. But I think like being able to look back and be like, yeah, that's sort of the first sign of like I knew it was coming. And for anyone listening that's not
Mhm.
familiar with this world, but like the levels are really like set in stone, right? Like it's very prescriptive. Like you can get in a career at a company like yours and just kind of know where you're going. And
Mhm.
there probably are people who have been there for 30 years that you work with. And sort of like that is just sort of the way of that world. And so I'd love to dig in more about when you did recognize that it was leading towards burnout and, did it seep into your personal life or were you able to sort of separate
Mhm.
it? And what all of that, how that unfolded.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's so true, like, that's sort of the, like, treadmill of it all, right? And that, like, conveyor belt sort of analogy of, once you step on, unless you make the active choice
Mhm.
to pivot or to detour and do something else, again, if you're performing, you'll just keep going. You'll keep going, going, going all the way through the process, and that was sort of the turning point moment for me when I started to reflect on it, where that like disconnection feeling and that like level of difficulty felt ratcheted up to just do the things that I would normally be able to do easily for my team, for my clients, for myself, became something that I couldn't ignore. Is that was when I started to look around and look at people that I worked with or knew of internally that were at those levels. So they were senior managers, they
Mm.
were directors, they were partners. And you have to ask yourself, like, do I want to do their job? Like, do I want their day to day? Do I want their responsibilities? Is that what I want? Because that was what I was going for when I was going for those previous two promos. And the answer, like, so viscerally was like, no, 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 absolutely not. I don't want to do that. And so I think that's one of those pause points that I think we skip over is the question of asking ourselves, looking around wherever you are in any role, function, creative project, etc., and just like asking yourself, do I actually want to do this, or am I doing this out of some sort of obligation or like autopilot, essentially? Like, am I doing
Yeah.
this because I've always done this or because it's expected? And for me, as I started to reflect on that and realize that, like, no, this is not what I want to continue doing, the next step is then like, I need to get comfortable with telling people that I don't want to do this anymore. And like, how do
Sure.
I find something else internally? Or, like, could you be a reference for an external hire, et cetera? And with that comes that sort of feeling of disappointing people because you're no longer sitting inside those expectations that they have for you. And so you kind of have to get comfortable with the idea that you're going to disappoint people inevitably by
Yeah.
striking out and trying something else or doing something different because they're so used to seeing you as a certain thing or certain way or certain, in a certain position. And especially when you work with a team, like that team relies on you in some way. So like obviously they're going to be bummed out that you might want to do something else and not stick around. But I think that willingness to sort of disappoint people and break those expectations is like a critical discomfort that you have to sit with if you want to pivot. And that was something that I like kind of had to get comfortable with really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so huge. And, I think we often don't talk about the disappointment that others may feel, but also just sitting with the discomfort and understanding that people might not understand it. They might not get it, right? If
Hmm.
you look at anyone who's in a career that seems to be going well, I think you and I might be examples of that at various stages of like things are going well. Like what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like you've got this.
Hmm.
You're marching towards that title. Or for me, you've I also kind of had an experience where I had like finally gotten the title that I'd been working towards at, a couple of different companies, and I'd been through a bunch of layoffs and like secured this job that, I thought would be give me the security and comfort, and like it did do those things, but that wasn't enough. And one of the things that I really wrestled with was like, how's this going to look? I've been in this
Yeah.
career for X amount of times. I've been laid off 3 times since the pandemic started. I should be grateful and
Hmm.
happy and all of that. And I think that's something that you and I are not the only people that have gone through this or are going through it. I think there is a big shift in the workforce in general, um, of the jobs we do not being the end all be all, not being what we bring home. And I think people are dealing with that in different ways. I made a on paper irresponsible, but it's at least planned for decision to leave my company.
Hmm.
You are, pursuing these other projects and whatnot. I know people who are sort of like live that 5 to 9 before or after their 5 to 9 life, which I just don't have the energy for, but I really respect it.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot. Yeah, I think that just sort of being okay with the disappointment, the questioning, the like, okay, I did it and it worked then, and now it's time for something else.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like you and I have sort of done a lot of that like inner work, which I think makes it so that you can make that choice to disappoint and break expectations and shift an identity label that somebody already has for you. And so, like, I think part of that, which, like, I think we've talked about a little bit before, is like breaking away from like the success measures that are like others standards or others' rubrics. And I think that's tough, right? When you are conditioned, obviously, through school, right? Your work is being graded against an external rubric or an external grading sheet. When you
Mhm.
join any sort of company that has a people function, there is a list of expectations that you're supposed to be hitting for whatever job role. And you're either meeting expectations or not, or sort of in between. But those are all external measures and external standards of achievement and of success. And so being able to move at least to some degree away from that and shift towards something that's more self-directed and honest and creative or whatever, fits your sort of internal metrics for what you consider to be success. Like you wake up each day and think, I'm doing a good job. Yay.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
that's where that like fulfillment piece actually comes from. And like that sort of shifted definition of achievement on your own terms is like a major part of that. And I think we see that a little bit too in like I'm sure you've seen the posts on LinkedIn that are like multidisciplinary careers are in and like people
Yeah.
are rejecting the like 9 to 5 and going freelance. Like people are, stepping away from roles that they might have had for years and years because of the introduction of AI and agents and blah, like all everything in terms of the way that we have been working and have worked and job responsibilities and roles and et cetera is all sort of like breaking down in real time. And while that's like
Yes.
scary on a macro level, I think on a personal level, it's a really nice opportunity to take a step back and think about like what your own internal locus of success is and that like do I actually care about what I'm doing? Like if this
Mhm.
job could go away tomorrow cuz a robot can do it now apparently, what would I be doing? Like what
Mhm.
matters to me, what
Yeah.
gets me out of bed every day that I would like to continue to keep doing?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's like, I think the first step is sort of acknowledging that for some people, the passion was never there. I think for others, that
Mhm.
passion sort of has fallen off. And it's okay, if I'm not finding my passion at my job, do I get a job that gives me that passion? Do I find ways to infuse that in other aspects of my life? So for you, like, what was the point where you said, okay, I am feeling apathetic about the work I'm doing. I'm not chasing the
Mhm.
same path that I was. I don't know if I want I don't know if I want the jobs that come with the titles or if I even want the titles
Mhm.
that are next. Um, so what did that moment look like for you and how did you handle that, like that reconciliation?
Yeah. It was sort of something that I was thinking about, but again, when you work in client service, you're so busy all the time, you almost can't hear yourself think. Like it's just like the next thing on
Mm,
the to-do list,
mhm,
for
mhm,
better or worse. And I was in sort of like kind of a crunchy team situation where there was a little bit of interpersonal stuff going on. And I had a tough conversation with one of my leaders, and it sort of like snapped me out of it. It was like the bubble popped around my head essentially. And it was like, you have one of those moments where you like almost step outside your own body and you're like looking at yourself and you're like want to like grab your own shoulders and shake and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like the house is on fire. Get out of here. Like, what are you doing? And so I had one of those moments following that conversation and I was just like, I can't keep doing this. I gotta find I can't keep doing this. Something needs to change. I need to find something else. And so I sort of like in that same day, like I had my, like, pity party internally and was like, "Okay, you have 10 minutes to feel sad and, like, well up in the bathroom and be, like, and emotional about this, and then, like, we're back in because 'cause we're a big girl and we're gonna put our big girl pants on." And I sort of immediately hit those job boards that we have internally at my
mm,
company, and I just started cold emailing people. I knew I wanted to transition into something marketing, comms, but that's such a big umbrella. And beyond that, no clue. So I ended up talking to people I had no business talking to internally. Like I was like, I ended up just shooting my shot, honestly, just cold emailing people all over the firm and all over the network, being like, "Hey, I'm a manager. I work on these clients. I'm interested in getting out of this like line of service and I'm interested in this. Like I'd love to hear what you do every day." And I ended up having
mm,
like 5 or 6 sort of like we'll call them informational interviews. And like, yeah, some of the people I'm like, I can't believe you took my call. Like, oh my God. There was someone I talked to who had like a dual PhD in psychology and economics. And they're like some sort of like, they're a thought leadership expert that sits like in our firm and writes, you know, papers, like white papers, like really
Wow.
informed, smart stuff. I was like, hello, I'd like to talk about what you do every day. Like, so like, I think that's maybe like level 10 confidence. And I think I have that. I will always shoot my
Hmm.
shot. I'll always just be
Hmm.
like, hi, I'd like to talk to you, which is, how we end up here, obviously. um, but yeah, like that's sort of how I started finding stuff internally. And I did end up finding something. Unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition quick enough, and I had officially like fallen off the burnout cliff. And so I ended up having to go out on a few weeks of leave to sort of recoup, rest, leave. Whenever people are like burnout recovery, like it's not the Pinterest graphic, it's not the
Not
Sunday
like bubble
reset.
baths and
No, it's not the Sunday reset video.
yeah.
It's none of it. It's actually like more sleeping and more crying than you like ever thought
Yeah.
your physical body could do. Literally all I could do was like sleep and cry. Like, and that was basically it. And I just like, the TV was on. I don't think I was actually watching it. I think I was mostly just like staring into space. Like it was, yeah, it's not cute. It's not hot girl reset. it's, it's tough. And sort of in in the throes of that, I had already been on the mailing list for the Ladies Who Let Company, who hosts those luxury reading retreats. And an email came through that they were launching a new retreat in the south of France, and it was going to be in May 2025. I'm sitting on my couch crying and sleeping in October 2024. So that's when this email comes through. I see it. I immediately go, yeah, I'm going on that trip.
Yeah.
Take my credit card.
Yeah.
I had dinner with my friend that night, and over martinis, I told her about this trip, and I was like, I'm coming. I can get a double room or a single, but either way, I'm going, and I need you to tell me right now, like if you're coming, because the trips sell out within 90 minutes sometimes. Like if you're not on it, good
Wow.
luck. Like they sell out so fast. And she was like, yeah, I'm in. So October 24, I I talked to her, put down the credit cards, bought the trip. May 25, we're in the south of France. And the woman who is the founder and owner of the company, Megan Christopher, is our host on that trip. And her and I just clicked like immediately. Like we were like instant friends. We're very similar in terms of communication style, sense of humor, sort of general life ethos, etc. And she had been talking about how she was sort of looking to hire more hosts to fill her role on the actual trip so that she could spend time with her family because she has a child and now a husband and also dogs. And she was like, I would love to be home with my people. And I was like, I volunteer. I volunteer. We're literally sat by the pool in the south of France in bathing suits. I'm like rubbing sunscreen on myself. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Let me know when you need me. And she was like, I was like, I'll volunteer. I'll do it right now. And she was like, it's a paid role. And I was like, uh, yeah, even better. Sign me up. You're going to pay me to do this? Like, to bring Prosecco to the girlies by the pool in gorgeous locales and talk
Yeah.
about books? What? Like, that's not a job. Come on. And so, like, in my head, I was like, this is not real. Like, there's no way. And the last day of the trip, she brought it up again. And she was like, if you're interested actually in it, I will send you the information. And I was like, I've never been more serious about something in my entire life. And so February 26th of this year was the first one that I got to host. And it was in the Caribbean. It was 7 days, plus a few extra days to shadow her at this like gorgeous 5-star nature conservatory luxury hotel crossover, stunning weather, stunning location. And it was like everything I wanted it to be. And I sort of, when I trace back all the things that had to happen for that to work out, like I almost had to have nothing on my calendar to catch that email fast enough to sign up for that trip, to meet Megan, to shoot my shot, to follow up, to interview, to get the job, to stick with it, get my first aid certification re-upped, et cetera, all the paperwork. and then be able to go on that trip this year. And there's a certain amount of and that's sort of I think what we talked about a little bit up top of like there's a certain amount of like balance between the like right place, right time of it all and like the opportunities that present themselves as luck. But there's also the
Hmm.
piece of like I worked my ass off to be
Hmm.
lucky, like I
Yeah.
did the diligence and I did the time to put myself in those spaces and places to be able to take advantage of those opportunities like that are like almost too good to be true, too perfect. And so I think with that, it's tough when you're in something that feels like it's grinding you to dust a little bit. And like the incline on the treadmill keeps ratcheting up and you can't keep up with it because you don't have the bandwidth to keep an eye out for those sort of opportunities that are like everything you could ever want, like too good to be true and have the persistence and mental capacity and space to continue to stick with them and follow up, right? Because when I came home from the trip in May 25, I sent her a LinkedIn message. I had to do a full application with a video. There was a lot of steps involved. I had to get, my first aid CPR certification re-upped, yada yada. Like there were many steps involved. And if I was like still grinding away on a 65-hour work week, I don't even know like if I would
Yeah.
have been able to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think like all of that, very true. Fully agree. It's like we never know what's coming, and so there's this kind of mysticism to like following whatever path we're on, and sometimes it's like hard stuff, right? But going
Mhm,
through the hard stuff makes you know the the great stuff even more apparent.
mhm.
I think. I wonder if you were stuck in that 65-hour work week and you did go on this retreat, like you probably wouldn't think about volunteering even before you thought it was a paid gig. You know
Oh
what I
my
mean? Like
gosh.
you wouldn't even like,
Yeah.
"Oh, no, I'm sitting by the pool and I need to be served prosecco because this is my week of escape in the south of
Mhm.
France." And so it's like that headspace may not have even been there to be like, "Oh, no, this is an opportunity. I'm gonna shoot my shot right now."
Yeah,
It's like almost we
yeah.
need to go through these things to understand what the other side feels like, to know we don't wanna go back there, and then to, like, make that choice to, do all
Mhm.
the other great things.
Yeah, yeah, I think about too, like, the women that I met on this trip back in February, like, it was really, like, big range, diverse range of people. I think I was the youngest actually on the trip, and so there was, people excluding me that were in their, like, mid to early 30s all the way up to their, like, mid-70s, and having that range of life experience and that perspective, especially to talk about like opportunities in life and where things have popped up. And like the people that go on this trip, obviously, like it's a luxury trip. Everything's really taken care of for you. And it's so nice to just be able to like unplug. But it's also so interesting to see that switch sort of flipping people halfway through the trip, especially the ones that have a lot of responsibilities, either at home or at work,
Mhm.
because they're so used to being the one that's clocked in. And
Yeah.
it takes effort, like even in the week that I saw to get people to clock out and unplug.
Mm.
And like, you don't
Yeah.
need to worry about the itinerary. You don't need to worry about the rides. You don't need to worry about what time we're eating. Like the reservation, you are passenger princess on this trip.
Mhm.
And I think like that is such a hard like mind switch for people. And I think a lot like for women specifically too, that have sort of like high powered jobs and like a lot of family responsibility and things like that. To flip that switch. But yeah, it's very much like in that vein of you when you're so in and so like on like that, you don't have room like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, cosmically,
Yeah.
whatever to be able to think about some of these things that we're talking about. Like, what do I actually want
Mhm.
to do with my life? What are my passions? What are my internal metrics for success and achievement, et cetera, et cetera? Because it has to be, one foot in front of the other. And so, where there are those chances and those opportunities to hit pause wherever possible, like I highly encourage people to take it because you almost don't even realize like how quiet your own inner voice and your own inner compass has gotten until you make an effort to like turn it back on and crank the volume back up. You like don't
Yeah.
realize that that's even something you're missing.
Yeah, I almost feel like we as people have a built-in mechanism to quiet that inner voice and to, like, dampen
Mhm.
it when we need to be like, it feels like a survival instinct almost when we feel like we're in this, like, fight or flight survival mode in whatever situation we're in, it's like, I can't listen to my intuition right now because if I do, then I'm gonna have to face, like, this hard thing, and
Mhm.
we can for so long. And I think we all have different thresholds of tolerance for how long we can deal with it. But if you can quiet it and you can sort of stay on that treadmill, then sure. But
Mhm.
to some point, that does dissipate into your earlier point about you had this moment and the bubble popped and you were kind of just trudging along, being like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah.
no, it's not. Everything around you is on fire. So, like, do something.
Yeah,
And
it's that meme that like everything's fine,
yeah,
like dog
yeah,
with a hat, and like everything's
yes.
on fire
Oh, I'm
around.
familiar.
Very bad.
I remember the moment I decided to quit my job, I also felt like I was in this period of just like ignoring. And when I saw it, I was like, crap. Like, I can't unsee that. I can't unhear that inner insight. And now I've got to do something about it. And like, it is powerful, right? To be able to like
Mhm.
figure out your own situation, but it's also hard sometimes to do the hard thing, get yourself out of it. And I
Yeah.
don't know about if you felt this way, but I very much, like, had no energy to pour into my creative self, and now I do, and would love to hear from you, like, how your creativity has been able to evolve in the last 2 years or so, year and a half since the
Yeah.
switch.
Yeah, I will say I've always it's so funny because it again, when you carve time out to, like, be able to hear that inner voice, there's so many, like, reflections and connections that pop up that have, like, sort of been signposts along the way that you've been missing and sort of,
Yeah.
like, breezing right past in an effort to stay in the fast lane for whatever reason that is. And so, like, for me, like, I've always been a words girl, in case that isn't obvious. Like, I was a big reader when I was a kid. I've always been a big reader. Like, my family jokes that our inheritance is books and that's it. So, like, I have always had, like, a deep respect for writers writing, fiction, nonfiction, et cetera, like just the way that people think and piece ideas together and then communicate those ideas and the ways in which they resonate across time is so, so cool. It's so powerful to me. And so, like, I've been a journaler probably like on and off for my like entire life. I'm the 15-minute voice note friend. If everyone
Mm.
has one, that's me. Like, I tried desperately to keep them to a concise manner. I don't possess that editing tool built into the brain package that I was born with. It doesn't exist. And so for me, like the hurdle in the creativity process for me was never the writing and the getting things down on paper and the idea exploration of it all. It was the publishing.
Mhm,
The publishing
mhm.
for me and
Yeah.
that visibility was sort of the frightening part and not actually the writing and the ideas. And so I think that sometimes is sort of that cliff edge that people stick at and they can't get past. And the only way I can like describe the feeling, and this was like of hitting publish on that like first piece was like almost like standing behind myself and like pushing myself off a high dive and just being like, shut up and do it, just do
Mm,
it.
mhm.
Like, also, especially, I feel like we set ourselves up with these like impossibly high stakes in our head. Like, the way that I was stressing myself out, like, I'm New York Magazine or something. And like, I have this like billions of followers and readers, and I'm subject to the journalism industry. Like I, like many others, probably have this bad habit of like scaling up the level of responsibility that is required of something that is effectively a hobby and a side project. Like, I am not the New Yorker. I am not Condé Nast. Like, it is okay if, like, something is slightly misquoted, the punctuation is not perfect, like, it's
Yeah.
okay, And so the hard part for me wasn't necessarily, like, the ideas, it was the letting people see them and taking that pressure off
Mhm.
myself to allow things to be seen, even if they're seen imperfectly.
Yeah.
And I can remember and like still viscerally feel in my body the feeling of like sending a voice note to one of my like ride or die best friends, like the kind of friend that would like help you get bury a body, like we're like super tight, and being like, I started a Substack, and I was like, I feel like I'm gonna barf saying that to you. Like I feel like someone is having to like physically rip the words out of me because it's so like feeling. And she was like,
Yeah.
"That's so cool. I love that. Send me the." And I was like, "What was it all for then? Why was I stressing myself out
Mm.
like this?" And
I
so, yeah, like I think it's two parts, right? Like there, as soon as you sort of give yourself permission, like the world explodes in a great way,
yeah.
in ways that you can't even predict. Like this, I could have never predicted this. Like the reading retreat crossover, could have never predicted that would happen. And so as soon as you start giving yourself permission to like throw your ideas and what you want out there, like everything just sort of it can starts to line itself up for you to take advantage of it. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's also taking that pressure off to like be perfect as a beginner and like as a starter, because yeah, like I don't know what delusion I was living in, that I thought I was like, I need to have like a journalistic team of graphic designers and writers and editors and blah, 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 all behind me. I'm just a girl. How am I supposed to live up to these impossible standards nobody set for me?
So true. We are our own worst critic.
Oh, God.
And it's
Every
like so
time.
interesting how so many of us are able to potentially suck some of the joy out of things that are supposed to bring us fulfillment and delight
Yes.
and be an outlet. I have had to really wrestle with like personal expectations and like, when I started my Substack, I was like, I'm going to post every week on this day. And I'm like, why?
Why?
Even with this podcast, it's like, what are you thinking? I'm like, every 2 weeks ish. Like, oh, like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's like, I'm going to do this. And it's like, why? And one thing that I loved about your approach is you said to me, your goal at this point is to write like one good post a month. And I love your definition of like good, because
Hmm.
your work really is good. It's researched and you're quoting Sontag. It's so like deep, and I love that like juxtaposition of talking about something that, and I don't believe this, but I think a lot of people see fashion and
Mm.
that industry as being a little bit lighter in terms of like depth, and you really are bringing
Hmm.
that depth to it. I was a sociology major, and for me it just like rings like, you're doing this like sociological analysis, and I love it. And I think that the standard not being based on this high output number, it's like, no, like this topic is something that I am passionate about. I want it
Hmm.
to be well done. And so therefore I'm going to do it well. And I love that approach, right? I think it's like good to have goals and whatnot, but
Hmm.
it's so intentional, and it's not like I need to write this in perfect AP style, because what if somebody from New York Mag is subscribes tomorrow and like they
Right.
read something and I put the period outside of the quotes and so they don't right? Like that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, like one of the sort of success metrics, or, am I on the right track metrics that I've defined for myself is, do I get to engage in intellectual curiosity and learning along the way? And so that's sort of been my like approach to the way that I write, is I'm interested in a lot of these things when we talk about like taste is the new intellectual marker of like if you're smart or not, if you have good taste.
Yeah.
But like, what's a good measure of taste? Like, how do
Mm.
somebody hates green but you love green, and they think that you have bad taste because you have a jade lamp? Like, you know what I mean? But like there's so much cultural
Yeah.
significance behind it. Like there's so many different like avenues you could take around like dissecting that jade lamp. And also the tension there is because I like it, Like, and
Yeah.
so I think that's always just such a it's one of those topics and like sort of umbrella fields that I feel like I could talk about forever, because you can approach it sort of both ways, from the because I like it angle and like I think it's pretty, which is extremely valid and completely fine. And also the I appreciate the cultural significance, the reference points, the historical context, et cetera, of this piece because it speaks to, these areas and these art movements, for example.
Mhm,
Both are completely valid and fine, and
mhm,
I love that tension. I think that tension drives people up the wall sometimes, and I love sitting in that, like, sticky bit in between the 2.
yeah,
Because, my thing with, like, beauty and my thing with fashion and art and style and all of that is, like, when we have free time, that is what we engage in. And, like, I'm sure there's somebody that's, like, just, like, completely, like, actually, no, I take it back. You can't be beauty agnostic because there's beauty built into the user experience of your favorite tech platform. Like they hired someone to do the UX for that and make it user friendly and nice to the human eye. So I actually
mhm.
forget that last sentence. You can't disengage from it. It's not possible,
Even, like,
even
an
if you
NFL
try to.
broadcast has a designer.
Yes, yes, yes.
Like, those team
Everything is
logos, somebody put a
produced.
lot of money into creating
Yes, like
those, crafting
somebody
those. Yeah,
did legwork and focus groups to pick the right font. Like
yeah,
there's you can't get out of it. I take it back that there's no way to not engage with it.
I
But
agree.
beside that, I mean, when we have free time, we go to the movies. We go to
Mm,
museums.
mhm,
We listen to music. Record, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you want, whatever format, you're engaging in art and creativity, whether you like know it or not. And I think they're like going that one step further of being sort of intentional and taking a beat to think about why you like engaging with it,
mm.
is literally like the step between like, I hate my whole wardrobe and none of these clothes feel like me. And every day I wake up and I have something to wear. That's it.
Yes. Yes. And I think as a greater society, I'll say people on the internet struggle with nuance, in my
Yes,
opinion.
I
And
agree.
I am a big fan of nuance. I love, like you, like I love living in that like middle ground space. Like I believe that two things can be true about almost anything in the world. And
Mhm.
it is hard when like I feel like online people want you to take a stance or not, right? Like
Yes.
I like this or it has this deep significance and that is the only reason why I can like it or whatever it may
Mhm.
be. Like there's and as this is a larger conversation, but as we get more and more siloed in our beliefs, like I think that just perpetuates, but I always find it really refreshing to be amongst others who do appreciate like that nuance and the
Mhm.
idea of and it's all true.
Yes. Well, and right, like if you are team because I like it on the internet, like you're shallow, you're ignorant, you're misinformed, like you're a follower, yada, yada, yada. If your team, here's the context and the cultural significance, you're elitist, you're exclusionary, you can't win. Right. And so there's always going to be one side of the house that thinks that you're doing too much or too little. And so it's not even almost worth like thinking about it in terms of like how am I going to make the masses happy if you are someone that's like thinking of exploring a creative practice, whether that's writing, whether that's, painting, sculpture, et cetera, whatever your medium is. Like there's always going to be somebody out there that thinks you're not doing enough or doing too much. So it's almost like do whatever you want, I guess, at the end of the day, like, if it's fulfilling and it's checking those, like, internal, like, self-directed success markers, congratulations. Like, you're doing better than a lot of people because a lot of people don't even have those sort of defined in any meaningful way. They're still drudging along.
Yeah, and I almost feel like there's almost like the absence of being able to experience all of that when you are in the midst of it and sort of like drudging through it. I love the idea of like acknowledging like there are these two sides of it. I don't fall within those two sides. I fall somewhere in between and I'm going to build something off of that and like the people will come. I wrote something today that I've been honestly writing for over a year and I was never able to articulate it because I could never figure out actually how I felt. But on Substack specifically, but in a lot of online spaces, if you are a parent, you are either expected to talk about being a parent,
Yeah.
really moms are expected to talk about
Moms
being
for
a mom,
sure.
or you are expected to be like, I have a child, but you will never see them because I am not like that. I am consciously claiming that as like my anti-identity. I love being a parent, but that is not what I talk about. And I really
Hmm.
struggled with that. I agree with both sides and also reject both sides at the same time. And it's like very hard to articulate that idea of course it impacts everything I do, but also like I'm gonna go crazy if that's the only thing I write about personally for me. Um
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and I think about being seen and like publishing and it is easier to find your niche or your people when it's like I talk about this specific thing. Here's my exact take. You know what to expect. But I think that there's a lot of power in pushing through that and, kind of
Hmm.
like what you're doing of being like, nope, like this is how I feel. I'm going to explain why. Here's the cultural significance. I love green. Here you go. Um, or I think of to your capsule wardrobe piece. You have a lot of things, you like things, but you also kind of did a capsule wardrobe your own way and as a way of like
Hmm.
forcing yourself to kind of go through your closet in a really, I don't know, organized way. And I loved that one. But I just
Oh,
think it speaks
thank
to
you.
being able to like, of course, um, yeah, just like put yourself out there and I don't know, it's like you're putting yourself out there to see what comes rather than having this
Hmm.
like big grand plan. And I think in like a lot of content creator spaces, it's like, well, you need to know what content you're putting out. You need to know your audience. You need to, I think all that stuff is good to have that as an idea. But I don't know. I think back to like your story about feeling burnout and not knowing what was coming. And because your life unfolded, you were able to have all these opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people get stuck too in that like perfect choice. Like when you have sort of that, when you have like a range of possibilities open in front of you, and it's almost impossible, particularly when you're in that like mental space of like feeling burnt out and feeling fried, and like you don't have the bandwidth to hear yourself think anymore. It's impossible to make the perfectly aligned choice, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so that like fear of making the wrong choice and waiting for clarity before you make the next move is not choosing, is the choice of staying exactly where you are, which I think is like a platitude that a
Yes.
lot of people have heard before. Like not choosing is a choice. Like everyone's sort of seen that
Yeah.
pop up on Instagram at some point or another. And I think for me, like when I was making like all of these different iterative moves kind of at the same time with like exploring internally new role opportunities and etc, like i I I was sort of driving my friends a little bit insane because I had the loosest criteria possible for like what I was looking for. I wanted it to be not my current job. I wanted it to be in marketing and cons, and that was about it. I was like, I'm not being too picky about like where I go next because I know that that's just like the next thing before the next thing. Like it's
Hmm.
not like there is no perfect choice. There's only the next one. And we're very rarely like chained down into like one specific spot for any long amount of time anyway. And so my thought being, if I pivot into something and I spend 6 months there and I hate it, nobody's making me stay there anymore. Like I can also just pivot again. Like it will be okay. And so that's sort of something that like I think I've grown into more as like an adult with a fully developed frontal lobe is like that concept of like moving quickly, moving smartly, but like if those are not options on the table, like just move. Like make a
Yeah.
choice that is in the general direction of where you're trying to go. And then, even if it's a little one, even if it's tiny, like starting a Substack or whatever, where it's entirely self directed and like you don't need permission from anyone to do that, like making those tiny choices to move in that general direction does massive things for like our psyche in terms of our own
Hmm.
identity alignment and the words that we use to describe ourselves, and breaking out of sort of those buckets and those boxes that like we might not even be aware that we've put ourselves in, for example.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And those we never know where those small steps can take us. And also like we
Exactly.
never know the impact is to your point, like that it's going to have on us as like subconsciously. Like you never know
Hmm.
what like putting something small out there, like how is that going to impact like your subconscious and how are you going to, feel about it like the back of your head when you're not thinking about it. And I think that stuff is really what that momentum propels. I also think something you said, it's like if I don't like it in 6 months, I know it's the thing before the next thing. And sometimes it's like the thing before the next thing, before the next thing, before the next thing. And it
Hmm.
feels like it's almost like a muscle. It's like you have to take that first step of saying not it,
Yes.
not aligned, or be put in those situations and just being like being willing to try new things. And I feel like that very much sums up from my perspective what I see in you is you made this career pivot. You've been able to stay at the same place. You also know that there are these like creative,
Hmm.
these things that you want to do, these interests that you have, and it feels like you're building something like at the ground level and just letting it percolate. And I find
Yeah.
that, quite inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think momentum is momentum, right? Whether you're heading in the wrong
Yeah.
direction or the right one. So, like once you start, like you said, it's like a muscle, right? Like it gets the
Yeah.
reps get easier the more that you do it and you iterate and you find what works and you find what doesn't. If it doesn't work, toss it. If it does, keep it. Like it sounds simplistic. It's like all I was talking to I think my partner about this. I was like, it's just so lame. The like simplest advice is like the right one. Like, I can't
It's so
believe that
annoying.
actually just drinking enough water and getting enough sleep and, like, feeling sunlight in your face works. Like, that's, like, so
It's
disappointing to
so
me.
annoying. Yeah, it really is. It's like how can we live this like big life and all it is like, no, you do need 8 hours, sweetheart.
It's just like
It,
and I completely sympathize with the people that are, like, so tired of hearing the platitudes, but it's, like,
I
actually
know.
so disappointing when you just try out the easy stuff and you're like, "Well, damn, I thought I had to, like, invest in this new technology thing, and I had to get a new app to set up on my phone, and I needed to buy a new wellness supplement, and I needed to, like, get a fancy lamp for vitamin D and red light and blah, blah, blah," and it's like, no, actually, you don't actually need to do any of that.
No, just get outside, go to sleep,
Yeah. Yeah.
drink some water.
Truly, truly.
No.
Like it's that aspirational thing. Like and some of this is probably like the highlight reel aspect that comes with social media of like we see people succeeding, therefore we think they must have worked really, really hard on something and
Mhm.
really, really like intensely and they have a specialized skill set. And like some of that might be true, like depending on who you're looking at. Like I don't have the hubris to think that like I could ever do anything like medical. Like, I don't have any background in medicine besides watching like House and Grey's Anatomy. Like, there's no like reason that I should think I should be able to do that. But like within reason, like everything is learnable and you can
Yeah.
experiment and you can try and you can do things. And I think we look at people that have had success and we discount that a lot of that is just diligence and persistence and not necessarily like something that is like a specialized skill set or a tool that only extreme wealth can buy or something like that. A lot of it is just like showing up and trying, which again, really
Yeah.
disappointing advice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I could just do the work and
Yeah.
cool,
Yeah.
thanks. And like being willing to be seen doing it, right? To your earlier point of like the writing's not hard, it's the publishing. Or, you knew something, you knew the job wasn't the right fit and it's like, well, now I have to tell these people. Yeah, and it's
Hmm.
like that
Yeah.
willingness to be seen very much carries over,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. For better or worse, you just kind of got to get comfortable. You got to get comfortable in the messy bit because that's when like the good stuff happens, like the magic happens,
Yeah.
and you never know like what is it, the butterfly effect or whatever. Like you never know like the ripples of the small choices and small actions that you make every day just by like doing something simple like going and working your like remote job at a coffee shop that day in the afternoon when you don't
Mhm,
have calls and just like tinkering
mhm,
away in a public space like that. Like you don't know who you'll meet
mhm.
or like come into contact with. Like it's hard to predict those little moments of like magic where the universe shows up for you and you just have to be
Yeah,
kind of paying attention, which is so
yeah,
woo woo, but
yeah.
whatever.
No, it is, but it's true. And I feel like, we've heard these dramatic stories. Like, was here and it saved my life, or I met my partner, or I got this.
Mhm.
And it's not always that, but yeah, it's just like about setting things in motion, and every action has a reaction or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, no, I think it's super powerful. What would you say to someone who's looking at you and is like, "Oh, Devon's got this innate ability to, do hard stuff," and I mean, like her confidence is through the roof. I also wonder if you've always been this confident. But like, what would you say to someone who says all of that to you?
Yeah. For better or worse, I've always been this way.
That's amazing.
I've always been like a very like self-assured person, and like even in my like low points when I've sort of had like my confidence kicked in a little bit, like I still have that like sort of innate ability to rally, but I do think that resilience is a learned skill. It's a skill that can be learned if you don't feel like you're somebody that was born with that sort of trait already built into the package. If that wasn't part of the standard model, you can add it. It's fine. Um, for someone, for someone that I envy is tough. Envy is a tough emotion to
Mhm.
feel and also to sort of react to, because it's kind of like apathy in that way. It's a signal, right? And so at least that's how I think about it. And so like when you're thinking about someone who you're envious of or something about them, like I think it's important to think about why that signal is popping up, and list out maybe the things that you're envious of that they have, whether it's like a degree that they have, a job that they have, this look that they have about them, an attitude or a presence, or a skill like public speaking or whatever. Like I think it's important to list all that out and sort of dissect it a little bit and understand it, and then from there, and this is my big sister advice, because I have an older sister, in case it's not like so clear by the way that I approach life and talk. I feel like with that, right, you either have like two options, and it's either let it go, right? Like
Mhm.
acknowledge it, take it in, let it go, and decide that it's not for you, or do something about it. And
Yep.
like you kind of have to decide like how bad you want it, like whatever that is. So if that's a degree that somebody has, like a master's or graduate degree, or even just an undergraduate degree or a trade, like you have to decide, are you willing to put in the same amount of time and studies that they put in to have that credential. Similarly with like careers, self-made or otherwise, like you kind of have to like decide how badly you want those, and if the work that you would have to put in to get that thing is worth it to you. And if it is, reverse engineer their life. Like look at what they did. Like candidly, for example, like I'm a really big follower of Heather, who's the writer behind Pig Mommy. And she also is
Mhm.
really big on TikTok. Her and I think have very different. We've never talked. She's no clue who I am. But the from what I've gleaned from her videos and from her writing, her and I have a very similar sort of like style ethos and like taste ethos and things like that. I will say, like, I think our style preferences and things that we gravitate to very different, but philosophically,
Mhm.
I think we're very aligned. And I remember like watching, like I watched a lot of her videos, and I was just like, I had that feeling of like, how does she do that? Like, how does she just like gets up there and like talks in front of a camera. And I'm just not I'm not big on social. Like, unfortunately, if anyone's looking to stalk me, you're not going to find much past the year of like 2022 or something, like, which is now archaic, archival information in the world of the internet. Um, but when she started writing on Substack, I was like, I can write. Like, I can Substack's free. Like, I can start a Substack. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna have, like, her following, but that's fine. I don't need that or want that right away. And so, it was one of those things where, like, I took the hint from somebody that I was really impressed by and really admired and really appreciated, like, her perspective on a lot of things, and turned it around to myself as sort of a mirror and thought, "Why can't I do that?" Like, she's had a whole again, this is my creepy background knowledge of her. She's had so many different careers in her life, and we're like about the same age. Like she doesn't have a background as a writer or anything like that. Like she can do it, I can do it. And that's maybe the confidence delusion that some people don't have, and I fully accept that. But I mean, that's just sort of an example of like kind of deciding like how badly you want something when you see it in someone else and if you're willing to put in that like time and effort gap to close it, you know?
Yeah, I do. I love the idea that like resilience can be built and confidence can be built if you weren't given it. Very much
Yeah.
like what I had it at some point and then throughout life lost it, as many of us do. So it's
Mhm.
definitely something that I'm working on. And I hope everyone else listening, whether you are the most confident badass or not, channeling some of that. I love that. Devin, this was
Yeah.
such an amazing conversation. I could keep you for another hour, but I will let you go.
Yes.
I know you said you are not super on social, but I know, you have your Substack. If
Mhm.
anyone wants to find you, where are the places to find you on the internet?
Yeah, I would definitely search me out at Cause of Brain Rot on Substack. As Julie mentioned, I put out something basically monthly in that realm of, style, taste, identity, etc. So expect about a monthly post from me, but otherwise I'm a pretty active lurker on that one. So you'll definitely see me around in people's comment sections and reposting
Can
notes and
confirm.
pieces. Yeah, I would say that one is that's probably the one that I've like lurked on the most. I've kind of let my Instagram go. LinkedIn's for work, but yeah, if anyone wants to connect directly, I highly recommend checking me out on Substack.
Wonderful. And I will have that in the show notes. Devin, thank you
Perfect.
again for joining me. Really loved this conversation with you. I am so excited to see what you do, where you go on your next Ladies Who Lit retreat. And to everyone else listening, thank you so much for being here. You can find this podcast on Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you listen to podcasts. You can get a full list of those. becringe.riverside.com. If you're into video, video is up on Substack and YouTube. If you want to see our gorgeous, beautiful faces. Other than that, I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I hope you all do the thing that you've been avoiding because it feels uncomfortable, and take some confidence and just do it.